Hello, Teresa here at the Field Lantern. Just today we're going to be talking about gardening, and I'm going to show you some of the things that we're doing. Out in my garden area, we have approximately an acre fenced off for our garden. So I'm going to show you a little bit of that and the things that we're doing here. So I'm going to switch my camera around here. We put in a fence for the garden area, used this type of fencing, wood posts, and it goes quite a ways all the way around. There's our beehives and up and to our cold tunnels and a shed. We have a large area. We obviously are not using all of it currently, but we fenced off a large area so that we would be prepared for possibly growing vegetables, for not just for ourselves, but for other family members and for possibly future sales here at the Red Barn Farm. So to start with, when you're getting ready to do a garden, you need to prepare a garden spot. We had our whole family out here as we prepared. We tilled this whole area, put in a sprinkling system. You can see the risers sticking up in various areas. And the sprinkling system that we have is a gravity feed off of a ditch that is close by. So we are, showing this. We spent a good part of our spring that year getting things prepared. So we are. So that kind of shows you what we've got. We've got several different things set up in this area. So the first step is the tilling, and here's a piece of area that we have just recently tilled, and we'll show you a little bit more about that. In addition to tilling, you'll want to amend your soil with some fertilizer. We also use some mulch. So between the two of them, you can amend the ground to make it much better. Some of the other options when you're doing your gardening, as you can see, we have some ground cover put down. This is a 20-year ground cover. We're on, I think, year 4 right now of what we've had it down for. With the ground cover, we cut holes in it. As you can see, have a few plants growing right here. So we just cut holes in and put the potted plants into the ground cover, those that we've started. Additionally, we put our ground cover with a little bit of row space in between. Here we have some weeds and some beets coming up from planting earlier this year, and the rows go on. We have several different things that we have planted in that manner. We purchased this ground cover at Steve Regan in Logan, if you are interested in getting some of that. Then another thing that we have done is our cold tunnels, and I'm just going to touch basic on a few of the things that can be done for gardening to increase growth. So in our cold tunnel, these are 8 feet by 30 feet, and they stay really warm. And we have onions that were planted in April coming up in here, and we have tomato plants that are growing, and then they will grow right up through. Most years they will get clear up to the ceiling or close to by the time the season is over. And then we have drip lines in here doing our watering, so they just kind of go through the bed to water the vegetables and stuff that we put in here. Some years we also do sweet potatoes in here. They like a lot of heat, and they do pretty good in the greenhouse setting. Obviously later in the summer, as it gets a little too warm for greenhouse, we do open up the side of the greenhouse so our tomatoes can be pollinated and to keep it from getting too hot. But it is nice to have the little cold tunnel or greenhouse that can extend the season really easily. So next, you're going to want to decide what you want to grow in your garden. We typically have done tomatoes, onions, sweet potatoes, your squashes, cucumbers. We have cabbages growing here also. My grandson was helping me weed around them the other day, and I was showing him some of the new young red cabbage, and I told him we were growing sauerkraut, and he was pretty excited about protecting that sauerkraut from any damage. Another thing that we have done is in a few areas we are doing a back to Eden type gardening. Here is some wood shavings that we've put down. It's been really great to keep most of the weeds out. We do have a little bit of a problem with morning glory and grasses, especially the rhizome grasses that will come up through it. But the weeding in this area is much easier. So that is one of the things that I wanted you to be aware of. As you decide what you want to plant, think about the vegetables that your family eats. What do you like to eat? What do you like to can? What can you do? What can you use for your family? I now have my grandkids have just showed up to help with the gardening. They like to help harvest and plant and dig. And so this is Mackenzie and Xander and Audrey, and they are here to help today as we do some planting in our garden. And we're going to show you a little bit on how to get started on that. I think I'm going to start by showing you how to start some of your seeds indoors. And so I'm going to have my grandkids come help me right here. And I'm going to kind of go walk you through the process. So obviously it's a little late for starting indoors, but I'm going to show you how to do it. If I start onions, I start that early in the year. Always start with a good professional growing mix. This is SunGrow Horticultural Propagation Mix, and it's a really good one for preparing your plants and getting started. If you're doing starts indoors, I often will start my plants indoors in March, sometimes a little earlier. So if I'm doing onions, I'll start that even earlier than that. But you'll fill your little cups with dirt. You want to help me fill some? You want to fill them all the way up. So I fill them all the way up with dirt. Audrey, will you go turn that water on and bring the hose over here, because we're going to want to get them wet as well. So after I fill them all with dirt, I want to get the soil quite wet. This starter soil is very fluffy and light, and the plants seem to grow really well in it. I think it has a little bit of wood shavings or something of that nature in it.
Oh, I got a cake.
So if you guys have questions, go ahead and type them out, and we'll try and answer any questions that you may have. So if you see questions show up, let me know. I have my granddaughter helping with running the camera and the video. And we're getting these all filled up here. Right here, bud. You want to put that in here. So, you fill a tray. We want to make sure the soil is good and wet before we put the seeds in it.
Are these things at the bottom questions?
Yeah, if somebody says something, go ahead and let me know. That's who's viewing right now. Okay, we'll let that set for just a second.
Turn off the water.
Yes, please. I'm going to grab some seeds. Go ahead and keep it on there. So now we're going to pick a couple of seeds to put in here. So I always keep a tote with all my seeds in it. And so for this, I think we will put just a few, just trying to see what I could plant in here this time. We'll put a few squash seeds in, which can be started about 4 weeks before last frost. I always do my tomato seeds and those things too. So we'll put like 3 seeds in each one of these pots, and Audrey's going to push them down in for me into the dirt.
The mud.
If you're starting tomato seeds, one of my favorites is the Romanesco. And I usually buy my seeds from Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds. And often you
Mama,
can still
do you
use the
want me
same
to
seeds
bury
for a
the
couple of
seeds?
years. Yes,
Yeah.
please bury the seeds. You want to plant your seed just barely about twice the thickness. So I'll put like 2 tomato seeds in each of these pots.
Grandma, do you need to
And then I'll just barely put a tiny bit of dirt over top of those. You don't want to bury them very deep because they're not a very thick seed. So when you're planting seeds, you only want to go about double the width of the seed. So there's lots of different plants that you can do.
I'm not drinking.
There's lots of different plants that you can do seeds, do starts on. And that's one way that you get started. Now I usually put mine in a south window for, while I'm growing them until it's warm enough outside to bring them out and plant them either in the greenhouse or in the garden. So that's one of the things that we do, and we've been quite successful. I do always put a fan in the room near the plants so that they will be a little bit stronger, and it helps them to gain a lot of strength that way. Next, I'm going to show you a little bit about tomatoes. We kind of have a special way that we do tomatoes. When we're growing tomatoes, one of the things that you need to know is if you're starting them, you'll start them in your trays and let them grow for a little while. Once they get about 6 to 8 inches, you're going to want to transplant those into a larger pot. And I do that a couple of times as they're growing. We're going to dig a hole here and show you kind of a little bit the method that we use for our tomatoes. So in our soil that we've just recently tilled, we'll dig a hole. And I want to dig the hole deeper than my plant because with tomatoes, if you want a really good root system, you want to plant all except about the top 2 or 3 inches of your tomato plant. So each time that you transplant it, you'll put the tomato at the very bottom of your pot or at the bottom of your hole. And then you'll bring it up. So I'm digging a pretty good sized hole here for planting a tomato. I do have one that's been transplanted a few times, and it's ready to go in the ground.
No, I'm helping
As you take your tomato plant,
bit with my own.
you're going to want to pull these bottom limbs off and sit it down so that only a couple of inches is going to be out of the ground, because that's going to help the dirt. It's going to help the root, the tomato to root really well, and you'll have a greater production if you plant your tomatoes with most of the plant in the stem area submerged under the ground. So that's our kind of a great little thing that we do for tomatoes. Then I'm going to show you a few of the tools that we use for our gardening. Of course, you'll want to have a shovel. So we'll use a shovel, a rake, and this is a hoop hoe. It's wonderful for weeding. And then a regular hoe for digging our rows. And then we have a spade and a little shovel. And then I love this little shovel here. It's just perfect size for my grandkids. They think it's just a shovel made for them. But I love using it when I'm putting plants into the dirt, and even for some of the weeding purposes that I use. So next we're gonna do a row crop. So I'm gonna have my granddaughter help me with that. I want you to dig a row. So we're gonna dig a row, and we'll put in some corn, and then we'll do a row of peas and just kind of show you a little bit. So you see she just digs the row. After we have our row dug, we want to fill it with water, because we want to plant in wet, moist soil.
Look at this already. Mommy, look at this.
Here, you want to take over? This part. So we've got a good moist row. Now we're going to put corn seed in here. And corn I usually plant about 6 inches apart. And this is sweet corn. And the variety that I'm going to use is Country Gentleman. So we have just a little short row there. We're going to show you the planting on that. And Audrey's going to help with planting that. About 6 inches apart. Okay, go ahead and start. Yep, about there, and then go about that far apart again. And gardening is a really good activity for children. It helps them to see the product of their labors and helps them to recognize the importance of working together as a family to produce food.
Guys, Grandma, come look at this.
Just a minute. And so as we finish planting the seed, we're then going to just lightly cover the row. Not too deep. We'll just want to put a little bit of dirt over the seed. Often when I do peas, I will plant the rows very close together, like 4 rows wide, and do several in that manner. But you do them the same way as we've just done the corn. I'm going to show you the peas that I have growing right now, so you can kind of see how we've done it. Usually let them come up good, and then you'll have to weed out the weeds that come up that are mixed in with them. So down on the end of this row I have peas growing, and that looks like I did 3 rows in this amount of space, so that they're close together. And yes, I do need to weed them, but they'll come up and produce really well. So we have some nice peas growing there. Also, some of the things that you can put in your garden are your perennials. You can put in herbs, Like here we have some lavender and we have some rhubarb growing. Rhubarb will come up every year, and it's, you know, use it for pies, use it just to eat fresh. Mine's come up and it's already seeding out this spring. Also have some peppermint and bee balm out here, and some thyme. We'll be putting in probably some basil that is currently in pots. We usually grow our peppers and transplant them out into our weed barrier. And then we fill up the holes. Yes, the weeds do come through the holes, but it's a much smaller area to weed than if we were to have to weed this great big area. And it saves a lot of time and a lot of work. Here we have done a trellis that we're going to be putting grapes on. We tried cucumbers on them. They didn't work that well for the cucumbers, but we think that the grapes will be great. We have grown peas on these in the past, the climbing pole peas, and they did really well as well. Our garden also, we have several perennial fruits and vegetables that we grow in the garden. When we first did our garden, we had a lot of little babies around, and we thought if we put grass between our perennial rows, it would give a nice place for them to lay. But unfortunately, where we planted in a pasture, we have a lot of rhizome grass that's come up in it, and it's spreading into our rows. So we'll probably need to do something else there. This plant here is horseradish. That is great for horsey sauce and for your cocktail sauce to use in that. These are currants that come up every year. Over here we have blackberries, or not blackberries, elderberries, and they are an excellent medicinal herb. And then we have our raspberries. We have two different varieties of raspberries, one that's a summer berry and one that is a late summer berry. This is our Joan Jays. We absolutely love this variety of raspberry. We got them from Norse Company, and they have been quite prolific in their production. They do really well. Usually come on in August, and we have them till frost. I have been picking raspberries from my garden as late as November 1st here. And then that's kind of the exception, not the rule. It usually freezes a little sooner than that, but they produce until they freeze. We also have some asparagus that grows quite well in this area. Here again, I need to address my grass issue. We've had them in here for quite some time, and we have some beautiful asparagus, and it's sweet and tender. Can also do strawberries, and we have a few blueberry plants that we started just, I think, last year. So we've only had a few blueberries off of them so far. But here's one of our small little blueberry plants. We keep our bees here in the garden. You can see our hives right here. That helps with pollination, and having them inside the garden fence kind of protects them a little bit from skunks and other predators for the bees. Does anybody have any questions? So let's see, what didn't I cover? I think that's the basics of gardening. It is important to keep your weeds out. If there's something, type of food that you really want to try, don't be afraid to try it. Get a few seeds, see how they do. Like I say, I have grown sweet potatoes. I have grown peanuts, but they didn't produce great, but I probably didn't use the best variety of seed. We usually do potatoes. One thing that we do with our potatoes, you see them coming up right now. They're getting a little bit larger. When they get about 8 inches tall, we'll weed this area that we have potatoes in, and then we'll add more wood shavings to this, and that will help them to root out more in order to produce more potatoes. I want to thank you all for viewing, and I hope that the information I gave you was helpful. And feel free to ask any questions that you may be interested in. Just send me a message or a text. We'd be happy to help with whatever your project is. Thank you.